and welcome to Women of the Middle East podcast. This podcast relates the realities of Arab women and their rich and diverse experiences. It aims to present the multiplicity of women's voices, and it wishes to break cultural stereotypes about women of the Middle East, as well as educate and empower the younger generation of Middle Eastern women who were stripped of their historical reference and weren't necessarily raised to believe in their agency and power to create their own destiny. I'm Amal Malki. I'm a feminist, scholar, and educator. I'm also the author of Arab Women in Arab News, Old Stereotypes and New Media. I created this podcast to be an extension and an update of the book and its main topics. Hello and welcome to episode 12 from Women of the Middle East podcast. I record this episode in the midst of nature in Croatia with unfiltered sounds of nature, which I hope this recording would transmit to you along with the tranquility that I'm living in as I record this episode. This episode continues featuring the talks from Empower Now, the online forum that took place in March 2021, which presented a collage of women leaders, experts, and business owners who shared their experiences and expertise. This intervention is by Rita Rhayem, who will be talking about women at the front lines leading the battle against Covid-19. Rita Rhayem is an experienced humanitarian worker with a demonstrated history of working in civic and social organization industry, skilled in non-profit organization, management, gender, and pharmacy. Strong business development professional with the Doctor of Pharmacy from University of St. Joseph in Lebanon. In her intervention, she speaks about the women humanitarian workers who led the fight against COVID-19 in Lebanon in specific. This sheds the light on women's hands-on approach during hard times. Now, the conversation between Hanane, the facilitator, and Rita, the speaker, focuses on how women have been leading, whether in times of crisis or not. But this role that women assumes is usually uncovered. It goes unnoticed sometimes, and it's very important to shed the light on that. It, of course, manifests the quality of the feminine and feminist leadership, and it breaks all of the traditional stereotypes about women and their roles in such times of crisis or times of hardship that their societies go through. Let's widen the scope. Women's roles during the pandemic have ranged from, of course, caregivers to decision makers, women working at the front lines, exposed to contracting the virus, women working in the health and education sector, like nurses and teachers, who had to take the double weight of and the double burden of the formal and informal jobs they lead. Women leaders also in these two sectors, but also in other sectors like economy, politics, and social and women affairs, knew that this crisis, like all other crises, is not gender neutral and will have women paying the biggest price, as we have already seen, with the increase of gender-based violence against women that spiked all around the world. But our region was the place in which the cruelest killings took place, at least from my point of view. Girls leaving school and not having access to online schooling, women losing their jobs, are things that have become so common to see and to hear about during the pandemic. Activists and humanitarian workers and feminist NGOs in the Arab region have also been working with their governments, when possible, on adding gender perspective to their national COVID response plans. The UN's generic response plan have created a framework for other nations to map their national response plans against, and has called for pandemic responses that address the intersection of gender, conflict, and COVID 19. UN Secretary Council Resolution 2532 calls for concrete actions to ensure the full, equal, and meaningful participation of women and youth in the development and implementation of an adequate and sustainable response to the pandemic. And the CEDAW Committee's guidance note on CEDAW and COVID 19 aims to ensure that measures taken to address the COVID 19 pandemic do not directly or indirectly discriminate against women and girls. It advises states to continue implementing the Women, Peace and Security Agenda, including gender conflict analysis as part of responses in humanitarian and conflict affected settings.
Good afternoon. It's so good to see you again. It's always a pleasure to talk to you, Rita. I was honored to have an interview with you before, and I'm really impressed with all the work that you do on gender balance, on bringing awareness and raising awareness on a lot of humanitarian issues. So I'm really happy to welcome Dr. Rita Rhayem. She's International Strategy and Partnership Lead and a humanitarian expert. And today the topic that I would love to hear your insights about is women at the front lines and how women are leading the battle against COVID-19. Actually, we cannot have any conversation today without linking it to this still ongoing crisis that has impacted us on many, many fronts. So I'd love to hear from you, your views and your insights, and I'm sure they will be very enlightening as usual. The stage is yours.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Hanane. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Hanane, for your wonderful words. And I'm so happy and honored to be part of this wonderful event. I'm so happy that now we're speaking in terms of gender, because for the first time when we're talking about the pandemic, we're looking at it and saying it is not gender neutral. And this is per se is an achievement. Yes, COVID has impacted women on a different way, and we have seen with Rita before how this COVID has increased the vulnerability of women. And by doing this, vulnerability will not be only attributed to women, but it is as well the resilience that we're talking about in terms of COVID. As a humanitarian workers, I have managed different emergencies, and COVID, on top of Beirut blast, on top of the economic crisis in Lebanon, has shown the great work of women. Women at the front line were there on a daily basis. When everyone was called to stay home, women were there. They were challenging, they were fighting COVID, and they were helping people. And because of women, we as organization, our projects were really targeting people who are really in need. We saw how women, because they were part of the community, they were able to speak the exact language of the community. As social workers, as health workers, they were there to stop the rumors concerning COVID, to raise awareness about COVID, but as well as to predict the trends for COVID. And because they could read the community, because they are part of the community, because they can speak the language of the community, NGOs and different organizations were able to put in place projects that will mitigate and will decrease the effect of COVID. It was really interesting to see how women can lead and lead from the field. And this is something really important, because leading sometimes and talking about leadership is talking about people and women within a sitting at the office. This is not always the case. Women in the field are the ones who are leading this fight against COVID. If we look at what happened, the combination of COVID and Beirut blast, if we see the pictures, and this is what happened as well with Caritas Lebanon, there are women who went to the streets, there are girls who went to the street to clean the streets, to help with the destroyed houses, to remove furniture, to paint the houses. And this is where breaking gender stereotypes were existing, and society was saying, welcome. So I guess let's look at those positive examples and build on them. It's so interesting to see how women who already have lost their houses, they were there to volunteer and to support others. It was really nice to see how nurses, how doctors were in the field, adapting their project, their health project, and exactly knowing what the population needs, implementing mental health projects, stopping taboos when it comes to mental health. They were there to distribute food, to listen to people. So I guess looking at COVID, there are many lessons learned. And one of them is that women lead. We don't need office to lead. We can lead from where we are. And yes, as an important, they form an important part of a humanitarian workers and health workforce. Yes, they have led and they are fighting against COVID and they are sending beautiful examples of resilience.
Absolutely. Thank you for mentioning that. It reminds me of an article I just saw, I think a week ago, I probably shared it in my social media, that talked about female leadership and how women don't need business to lead. Like you said, they don't need an office to lead, because when we say leadership is about influence, is about doing good. So, and leadership is about impacting positively your communities and the people around you that you need to work to serve. So, and women have shown that because they are out there. And as you rightly shared, the example of Lebanon in its crisis in August that, you know, we were all really impacted with, definitely they have shown sense of leadership. And that's the kind of leadership, because in business, that is management. Leadership was when you want to serve others, when you want to create that social impact. You can never disassociate leadership with social impact. It's a great example that you shared with us. And so how can we create more spaces or more opportunities to raise awareness about this importance of feminine leadership in handling crises or in enhancing positive impact?
Well, I guess, yes, we're talking about a COVID crisis, but with every crisis, there's an opportunity. And this is an opportunity. This is a very important time where we can build on what everyone is speaking about, which is women at the front line of the COVID. This was as well the topic of the UN for the Women's Day. So let's build on this momentum. Every time when there have been any changes in societies, when have been any revolutions, women were at the front line. But unfortunately, when it comes to the decision, women were sent back to the private sphere, and then it is all man leading. I think that this is an important time to say that business as usual should not continue. This is a time to say that, yes, we're uploading health workforce, we're uploading humanitarian, but it's not only about uploading, it's as well giving the time and giving them the place to sit at the decision making, to sit at the table. There are beautiful examples of this. One of the examples, which is not in Lebanon, but Caritas Uganda, for instance. In Uganda, there have been many important steps undertaken to decrease the number of COVID, yet the number of COVID didn't decrease. And why? Because women, as per the culture, they are responsible of collecting water. So they go to the water stations to collect water, where there's more than 300 women there. However, when they started to work at the district level and include women within the decision making, everything has changed. So I think that now let's first of all collect those wonderful examples. Let's have those wonderful examples, because this is not only it's data, it's based on data and science, but as well it's stories, it's pure stories. Collect these data and let's collect those stories and let's build on it. So I think giving them a place to speak and to take decision and to act. But most importantly, and I know that this topic is dear to your heart, is not only speaking about inclusion, but putting in place inclusion. It's deciding to how we're gonna select our future leaders, because this pandemic, this COVID has shown us that leaders who believe in inclusion have managed the crisis better than the others. So let's add inclusion as a selection criteria, not only looking at the expertise and the CV, but as well as is this person do believe in inclusion or not. I think it's really important to look at the myths that we were living with. So the fact that women cannot manage, or the fact that a mother doesn't have time to manage, those myths were debunked during COVID, because a humanitarian worker is a mother. She was not only going daily basis to her job, but she was as well shouldering additional tasks such as online education, such as being mother, such as taking care of others, and they managed to do it. So let's debunk those myths and say that it is time to think about the systems that we're using in our societies. It is time to think about how to include the humanity within our system, because when we include the humanity within our systems, this is a place where we include everyone, men and women. And we're not saying that women only should lead, we're saying that men and women should complement each other and should lead. And probably people will say in the humanitarian sector, there's the essentialist nature of women, which is nurturer, taking care of others. I would say no. This is not the case. But the women, especially at COVID, have shown their courage to go and search for the people who are in need. They have shown an incredible courage in going out, not in terms of leaving their home, but in terms of seeking who is in need. And this has been reflected on different projects that we're leading, because we're not only focusing on people who are subject to COVID, we're focusing on refugees, on migrants, on people who have lost their jobs. We're going beyond COVID to look and search for vulnerability, because vulnerability now is not an attribute of women, but it's an attribute to anyone who can be vulnerable. And vulnerability is not permanent, it's not every time, and it's not everywhere.
Thank you. Yeah, absolutely. Amazing insights. And I like the word that women have shown that they can lead, and they've shown that they can impact positively as well. And as Mrs. Ragada was sharing before, sometimes because you need a mindset shift, sometimes you need those quotas. So I have mixed feelings about those, but there is a term that is widely also applied or widely spoken about, which is positive discrimination, which is sometimes you need that so that you kind of like imposed with those quotas to give a place at the table, as you mentioned, for women, because without that, it will take us centuries for some decision makers, who could be men and women, for them to see that value add of having diversity. Because at the end of the day, as you said, it's not about just having women, but it's about having men and women. It's about balance, and that's what we advocate for, and that's what we strive for. And you know, I wear the hat of Tawazun as well, which is really about, let's have those untold stories. Like you said, it's not just about really looking at what's happening, but it's about showcasing, shedding the light, because those stories tell a lot. And there are so many out there, so many success stories, so many impactful stories that are not told. So I think we should start somewhere. And thank you, Dr. Rita. If you have a closing comment, it was amazing when you made insights for all of us to see the role of women in the crisis and the lessons that were learned from this COVID-19 pandemic. Because I think all of these challenges were there. What happened with COVID-19, it accelerated and also exposed so many things that were just hidden under the carpet, as we say.
Exactly. I guess that's what we've learned, and throughout all the discussions at national and international level, one things keep repeating. We keep repeating the same rhetoric, which is women are a force of change. So let's believe in this. Let's choose to challenge, and let's start acting, because it's time now for more action rather than words. So,
I love that closing. Women are force of change. Thank you so much, and I'm sure that our paths will cross again on another stage, whether virtual or face-to-face, inshallah. Thank you so much. Have a great evening.
I hope you have enjoyed this episode and the tranquility of my background, although there is a bit of a chanting in the background. I'm not sure where it's coming from. Next episode will conclude our social impact selected talks with Dagmar Symes' intervention on the glass ceiling, ambition versus gender, all brought to you by Women of the Middle East podcast and Executive Woman. Keep on writing to me. And until next time, please stay safe and stay well.